morning and welcome back to my channel. My name is Joanne. I am a law student from Australia, so good to see you. Whether you're watching live or the replay crew, hello and welcome. Yes, I just thought I'd come on. And I did have one of those moments where I was sitting here talking away and realised I hadn't actually clicked the live button. So this is like take two. So I just wanted to check in and see what was happening with everybody, see how everybody was, how is life generally. We've got some interesting things happening. We've got a state election in a couple of weeks' time. We've had hacking scandals, which apparently has been linked to Russia. The Russians are blamed for that. Very, very interesting. I know the US have had midterm elections. Is it midterms? And UK is still getting used to a new prime minister and a new king. Actually, I was watching the T20 cricket the other day, and it was England versus India, and the anthem, and it's still God Save the King doesn't quite sound the same. When you spend 40 odd years, hearing God Save the Queen. In fact, up until 1984, God Save the Queen was the national anthem of Australia. In 1984, they changed the anthem to Advance Australia Fair, sort of started to give us a little bit of our independence. So it was up until 1994 was God Save the Queen, and then became Advance Australia Fair. And so we always, Anzac Day was always, you always had God Save the Queen. So when you've spent 45 plus years singing God Save the Queen, to hear God Save the King, it's a bit of a shock to the system. So still getting used to it. So I'm interested from my UK watchers and members and subs, whether you're used to it yet. How is it for you? Because it's not our anthem, but it's just something that, because we are a monarchy and the king is our head of state, that gets played, particularly Anzac Day and Remembrance Day. The RSL, for example, is very big on playing God Save the Queen, God Save the King. Sorry, interested to see what and so it is. What's the time? 8:22 on a Saturday morning, and I thought, oh, what am I going to do? Can't sleep, so I thought I'd come and chat with you all. So so there's lots of things happening, and it looks like we've got Queensland has just been asked to wear masks again. For a very long time in this country, they pretended COVID didn't exist, but it looks like, as predicted by some of the health officers, that it is going to rear its ugly head again. But unfortunately, when there is an election, they pretend it's not around, and we have an election coming up in our state. So anyway, I am just very, very interested to see what's going on in your lives, and have a chew the fat, as they say, because it is early, I know. And I know I didn't send out. I know I need to get in and look at good times and try and be regular again, and I'm really sorry that I'm not. That's just my life at the moment. It's all over the place. So I start work tomorrow on the Victorian state election. Don't know what I'm doing, but I've got pre-election work. I've got to go to a data entry. That's where all the data entry is happening, and I'm working from 2:30 to 10:30 tomorrow. And then Tuesday I'm 7 a.m. to 2:30, or 7 a.m. to 2. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. And my brother gets married on Friday. So that's all really, big big news. So yeah. And yeah, I don't know what else to tell you. I don't know what else to tell you all. Um, I know I should really, uh, have something planned, but I just sort of come on and I go, oh, let's talk about this, let's talk about this, and then I get on and I can't remember what I'm talking about. So I don't know how things are where you are. I mean, look, our weather's all over the place at the moment too. The other day I was out in, had my summer dress on, and today I got to put my coat on. It's supposed to rain today, so yeah. So South Australia's all, yeah. Everyone is likely to see rates in COVID. Now we've had this thing called robo debt. So there's a royal commission at the moment into robo debt. So Social Security, or Centrelink, is the social security arm of uh, our country, and the last government called it. So robo debt was a formula that they used to calculate money that people owed, and essentially what the formula that they used ensured that everybody was in debt. So if you had a casual job and you were earning your income, they actually calculated that over. They multiplied that by 50 by a whole year, not for the hours that you worked. So what happened is that they were saying that your income was wrong and putting you in debt. So um, when you did your income, it would give a figure, but when they added it, but their figure was lower than what they tried to imply, that because you were reporting your income, that you were reporting it wrong, even though you had pay slips. And I got caught up in this. And I had to submit bank statements and pay slips, and I had to highlight every payment that I received. Hello, Terry C. And they said that I incurred a debt. I had a $2,000 debt. Now, I was one of the lucky ones where my figure was low and I paid this off. But it went to court. There was a class action and the people won. And the government not only had to pay back the people what they had paid back if they paid back, they owed compensation. My compensation was $70. But now there is a royal commission, and so they call it robo debt because it was all computer generated. It was it was all based on a formula. There was no common sense wasn't going to prevail. So you couldn't explain, and everybody was treated the same. It was horrible. So so it was nicknamed robo debt. So the Royal Commission has started, and the former Human Services Secretary tells Royal Commission that she had a lack of curiosity regarding the lawfulness of robo-debt. The top bureaucrat at the department responsible for the Commonwealth's unlawful, and it was deemed unlawful by the High Court of Australia. So it was unlawful. Has told the Royal Commission it was a significant failure of public administration. The Commission before Catherine Holmes heard from Catherine Campbell AOCSC, who was the Secretary of Human Services from 2011 to 2017. Her department proposed the automated data matching scheme, which unlawfully raised automated debts against hundreds of thousands of welfare recipients as a means of debt recovery for the coalition government. For the former coalition government. Council Assistant Commissioner Justin Gregory KC asked Ms Campbell whether she considered the scheme implemented under her secretaryship as a massive failure of public administration. Ms Campbell replied, "I consider it a failure of public administration." On a massive scale, Mr Gregory asked, on a significant scale, can you think of a larger failure? I think it is a significant failure. I've been involved in other significant failures, but I don't think it's helpful to talk about those, said Ms Campbell. Earlier, the Commission heard that despite being involved in the drafting of an executive minute sent to then Social Services Minister Scott Morrison, yes, ScoMo, yes, in 2015, Ms Campbell had a lack of curiosity into the legislative changes needed to validate the 2015-2016 budget proposal that became RoboDebt. It's funny how ScoMo's name's in most of this. It is not my responsibility to draft or advise. Oh, are you saying that in your role as secretary, you participated in drafting of a minute for the Minister of Social Services without understanding the nature of the advice from DSS in respect of legislative change, Mr Gregory asked. It's not my responsibility to draft or advise the Minister on that legislative change, she replied. I cannot recall that I drilled into what parts of legislation needed to be changed. In an exchange with Commissioner Catherine Holmes, Ms Campbell said that it was the role of the Department of Social Security. Commissioner Holmes interrupted, wouldn't this affect your department? The fact that the legislation under which you operated had to be changed? Wouldn't it be something you'd want to know about? Ms Campbell, the split between the DSS and DHS at the time was the DSS was responsible for the legislation. Commissioner Holmes said that they'd draw it, but it would affect your department, surely. Ms Campbell said, it would affect our department, but... And Commissioner Holmes interrupted again, so you didn't need to know what it would do, how it would affect your department. Ms Campbell replied, we were administering many programs. You can already see that this is a train wreck, and I think it's going to be set up where the public servants are going to be hung out to dry, and the politicians are going to, a bit like the New South Wales one into the job scandal there. But she should have known. She should have asked questions. Commissioner Holmes says, okay, so we've established that it's a lack of curiosity about what the legislative change might entail in circumstances where it would unquestionably affect the operations in your department. In hindsight, it looks like the lack of curiosity, Ms Campbell conceded. The Commission heard. Ms Campbell did not seek detailed legal advice for the scheme when it was being conceived because income averaging using tax office data had been used by DHS for years. So yes, it was averaged income. So it wasn't actual income. They averaged out your income. So essentially, most people got debts. There had been a practice in place for over 30 years, Ms Campbell said. Burglars probably use the same practices for 30 years. It won't make them lawful, Commissioner Holmes said. I like that. In hindsight, it would have been better if we had sought external legal advice, Ms Campbell conceded. The Commission was told Ms Campbell signed off on an annual report in 2017 that said data matching processes are not changed and were carried out in accordance with guidelines. It is clearly untrue. It's misleading, isn't it, Mr Gregory asked. I now review it and see it should have been phrased differently, she said. It's misleading, isn't it, Gregory said once again. The income was assessed and changed under the Online Compliance Intervention Program, RoboDebt. I do accept the central... So the actual thing was the Online Compliance Intervention, but it became RoboDebt because, that one line of a long annual report, and I accept the drafting could have been more accurate. Mr. Gregory put to Ms Campbell that the drafting was an introduction to defend the department's position in offence to the controversy which occurred in January of that year, 2017, leading to the Ombudsman investigation into RoboDebt. Ms Campbell said she did not accept that assessment, and so they're going to do more hearings in December. And it's not clear if the coalition government members who oversaw the scheme will be called to give evidence. I think they should, but politicians seem to be a law unto themselves. But yeah, it's I can tell you now it was very stressful. And at the time, I was working for the department. I was working in the department and getting calls to say, "Hey, you need to do X, Y, Z." And I knew it was wrong, and I argued and I fought, and I ended up submitting everything and then just copying the debt. It was very stressful for me. I can't imagine what it was like for everybody else. So yeah, look, I'm really interested to, do you have stuff like that in where you live? What's that like? So it's right, so it's gone in, it's having a break at the moment, but here are some key takeaways from it. So the Online Compliance Intervention Program was introduced by the federal government in mid-2016. It was an automated system that meant to ensure that people on Centrelink were not over-receiving because, let's just say, apparently it's not the fact that the rich people or the big multinational companies don't pay tax in this country. It's just the people that need help are taking advantage of the system. Yes, all that sarcasm is intended. I get really annoyed whenever they want to save money. They always go to the people that have nothing and try to take the little that they get from them, and all the tax avoiders and all the millionaires and all the billionaires and all their mates do nothing. It compared income data from the Australian Tax Office with what welfare recipients reported to Centrelink, a process known as income averaging. Previously, a Centrelink officer checked each case, but the new system meant a computer now detected discrepancies and generated an email to the welfare recipients, forcing them to prove that they were not overclaiming. That's what happened to me. The system generated an exponential greater number of interventions and came under heavy criticism for placing the proof of burden on the welfare recipients. Shortly after the scheme was implemented, people started to complain that they had been issued bills for debts that simply didn't exist. In some cases, the debts topped $24,000. The scheme unlawfully claimed almost $2 billion in payments from 433,000 people. It was scrapped in May 2020, and in August this year, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese fulfilled an electoral promise by ordering a royal commission into the scheme. So that's how it happened. And, the inquiry was showing some internal emails between lawyers within the Social Services Department in 2015 when the scheme was being formulated, relating to a draft brief being prepared by the then Social Services Minister ScoMo. The inquiry had evidence from a principal legal officer within the department who was involved in the preparation of the legal advice in 2014 that indicated the proposed scheme was potentially illegal. Lawyers in her team provided more advice in 2015 because the Department of Human Services was advised that Mr. Morrison indicated he wants a number of potential proposals in an attached briefing he brought forward for portfolio budget statements. Miss Paulford agreed with Counsel Assisting Justin Gregory KC that it appeared pressure was coming from a clearance by Minister Morrison to have a new policy proposal developed to the point where it might be submitted to the Department of Finance. Mr. Gregory drew Miss Paulford's attention to an email comments from government lawyers with the external advice, including one describing it as somewhat unhelpful and another one that stated they might be able to rework the advice if this causes catastrophic issues for us, but there is not a lot of room for them to do so. So they were told it could be illegal. So this is a woman whose son was told he owed $2,000. Oh, look, unfortunately there have people that have unalivened themselves because of their debts, and it's horrifying. On Monday, October 31, Mr. Gregory KC opened the hearing by highlighting that the high-level external legal advice had not been sought about the scheme, despite it seeking to recover millions of dollars from hundreds of thousands of Australians. In view of the scale of the debt recovery program initiated by the Commonwealth against its citizens, it now seems obvious that the advice from the Solicitor General or other eminently qualified barrister ought to have been obtained before the scheme was implemented, he said. Plainly, this was not done. Mr. Gregory also revealed that in 2014, the department's own lawyers raised concerns about the way the schemes estimated or smoothed out incomes. Among those intending inquiry was this lady of a 22-year-old who unalivened himself in 2019, hours after learning he owed $2,000 Centrelink debt. I want to see some accountability to see that nothing like this happens again. There has to be some safeguards in there for people with mental health. She said she was appalled to learn the department had been warned about potential legal issues in 2014 before the scheme came into effect. This, as I said, this was very stressful. I know from my own experience how stressful it was when you are being accused of, and you've submitted all your pay slips and all your bank statements, and you've gone through it all, and you're still being accused of not telling the truth. Some bureaucrats said robo-dope was not their top priority. Day 8 of the commission heard from Serena Wilson, the former Deputy Secretary of the Department of Social Services, which is responsible for getting legal advice on behalf of the Department of Human Services. The inquiry heard Ms. Wilson received legal advice when the scheme was being designed, showing that the income averaging method was unlawful, but she lacked the courage to tell anyone, including the then Social Services Minister, Mr. Morrison. Ms. Wilson told the inquiry she was consumed with other government priorities at the time. Ms. Gregory told the Commission Ms. Wilson met with Mr. Morrison in 2015 but did not raise concerns with him. Ms. Wilson said she thought they had come to an understanding that what became robo-debt in particular, the income smoothing or average method, would not go ahead. I thought we'd killed it. In hindsight, I was clearly wrong. In my opinion, this is the man that should be held responsible. Yes, ScoMo, former Prime Minister ScoMo. The Commission heard paperwork was altered, seemingly to weaken some of the warnings about robo-debt. A copy of a brief drawn up in 2015 for Mr. Morrison contains a watered-down warning about legal and policy problems with robo-debt. The Commission heard the draft executive minute, which noted the need for legislative or policy changes, had crossed out a phrase warning of the issues with proposals and replaced it with a reference that may have significant implications. The crossed-out phrase flagged the fundamental impacts on Social Security policy and legislation. The draft was located by Deputy Secretary of Social Security Matthew Flavel in response to a request by the Commission to find all relevant documents and emails relating to the robo-debt proposals. He agreed that the language has been, in effect, watered down from a very clear position. So bureaucrats at the DHS, which initially proposed the robo-debt scheme, felt pressured to find a new way to rein in potential welfare fraud and non-compliance. Yes, because, allegedly, everybody, this was the thing, everybody on Centrelink was a fraud. And as I said, there was 500,000 people found to have had debts that have now been found to not have had debts. It was, very stressful. The agency's former National Manager of Compliance Risk, Scott Britton, told the Commission the department was overwhelmed with work. I loosely call it the department's big machine as far as there was a lot of operational activity, a lot of processing, a lot of staff, a lot of issues, just generally day-to-day challenges. Mr. Britton told the inquiry DHS were under internal pressure to come up with new budget savings for the department. Well, I can come up with a few budget savings for the department, don't you worry. Get rid of a lot of the middle management. The Commission heard Mr. Britton nominated former DHS Director Jason Ryman for an Australian Day Achievement Award in 2017 for his role leading the online compliance intervention project, which became known as Robo-Debt Scheme. It's so interesting that a lot of these people have walked away with awards, right? That have that for now what's being described in court as an illegal program. I don't recall receiving anything to say he was successful in the nomination I put forward, he said. The department signed off on the scheme without knowing if it was legal. And then again, they're all saying, it's not my fault, not my fault, not my responsibility. We're just passing the buck, passing the buck, passing the buck. Miss Wilson's boss, Finn Pratt AO, Order of Australia, who was the DSS secretary from 2013 to 2017, told the commission the scheme's problems were not a priority and he was more focused on other matters. They were focused on getting the money. He repeatedly said he did not have any knowledge of the scheme or its illegal income averaging method until 2017 when the Ombudsman was investigating. Mr. Pratt said he signed a letter to the Ombudsman saying his department was satisfied that it was operating legally because he trusted the advice his officials provided. Every bit of advice I saw suggested we as a department thought everything was working reasonably. Obviously, that was wrong, and I was wrong in my assertion to the Ombudsman. I take responsibility for that, Mr. Pratt said. Well, why don't you give your income back that you earned during that time? Commissioner Holmes said, I appreciate you had multiple headaches, but that's the life of a secretary of the department, isn't it? But this was a pretty large and obvious one issue, given the Senate media attention. Mr. Pratt interrupted, Commissioner, I don't want to debate you on this, but in my world, this was one headache, which wasn't my headache. So they're all passing the buck. On the final day, we heard from former head of Department of Human Services who would not admit robo-debt was a massive failure. And again, heard from Catherine Campbell, AO, Order of Australia. All these people. So she said it was a significant failure. She would not admit it was a massive failure. But yes, it's very, very interesting, this robo-debt scheme. So I'll be interested to see how this plays out. But as I said, I know from my own experience, it was very, very, very stressful. Absolutely stressful. So, yeah, so, and as I said, we've had a whole lot of data leaks. They're saying it's come from Russia. I don't know whether that's true or not. So, what else can I talk to you about? So I believe that, according to the headline here, it says, is Donald Trump in trouble? Can he really come back? Can he really come back? This is what I mean. The headlines are he's toxic, but I know that he's had the media against him before and he's come back. But it looks like that it's blue, isn't it? So, no, sorry. Oh, look at this. So it says the Democrats are still expected to lose control of the House, but by a much slimmer margin. Thanks to a win against Trump-endorsed Mehmet Oz in the swing state of Pennsylvania, there's still a chance that President Biden's party will hold on to control of the Senate. So 49 Republicans, 48 Democrats, so 29 seats not up for election. Balance of power. It was a bad showing for Republicans, particularly for Trump Republicans. Those far-right election design anti-democratic Trump candidates, it was a relatively bad election for them. said Emma Shortitz, a historian and US politics expert from RMIT. It's much worse than many experts, including myself, were expecting. So it's going to be, as I said, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. Oh, Dr. Oz, was it? Celebrity Doctor. Okay. So he lost, right? Trump is furious this morning, particularly about Mehmet Oz, and is blaming everyone who advised him to back Oz, including his wife, describing it as not her best decision, according to the people close to him. Oh, well, the thing is with people, everybody, I actually would like to see people taking the blame for stuff rather than not blaming, this would it be refreshing to see people stand up and say, I take the blame for this? Okay. Anyway, I've been on here for 30 minutes now. I need to get on with my day. Got a big day planned. Well, not a big day planned. I've got some study to do. As usual, today we are spreading. So my grandma passed away in January, and she wanted her ashes released. So we just haven't been able to get the family together and couldn't decide where to do it. But we've got the family coming together today. We're going to release her ashes at a place called 100 Steps, and it's near where I live. It's in the same suburb she ended up living, and it's going to be released. That's a walking trail, and it's going to be released over the ocean, and we're going to set her free today and put closure to that. And then I'm going into some election work, and I'm working right up until I have surgery in December, and then I've got to take a few months. So I'm trying to work while I can, because I'm going to have a month where I won't be able to work. So I've sort of got to get my income. I've got to get my income up so I can cover that downtime. So, but hopefully, when I've had my surgery, I'll be fit and raring to go again. Anyway, I want to thank you for joining me. Please, hit like and subscribe. Look, you can become a channel member if you would like to support the channel in any way, or going down here is some other ways to do. I'm starting on getting my Patreon up and running. There'll be some stuff on there eventually. I keep everything low price so that everyone can afford it. And, I hope to build up the Patreon and everything, and keep channel memberships cheap, and then all the cool stuff on the Patreon. But look, that's all been built up. We'll see what happens. But anyway, as I said, thank you for joining me, and I'll catch you next time. And I'm still checking legal documents and everything. There's no update on there. But I have had a lawyer say to me that they're absolutely, that the excuse that Graham Cracker is given is not going to wash with the judge. So she won't be impressed. Anyway, let's mark the 21st of November down, and we'll look forward to that court hearing and my summary of it. Anyway, I need to attend to my workplace law and policy coursework. And I'll catch you again later. Bye for now.